Now I'm going to take a project that does not have a core data plumbing and add core data capabilities into it. File new project, single view application. See, there is no core data. So I already created a project like that. So step number 2 is to click on the project right there, go to build phases, link binary with libraries, click on this plus sign, find the core data in this line, click on it and click add. I've already done that. Core data framework needs to be added in here. Step number 2, we want to add core data model. I named it the same name as that the project discard me. Ended up with discard me x data model. Go in there, add entity, employee, click on the plus sign here and add an attribute. First name, type string. You can look at it this way or that way. So data model done. Next, product, editor, create NSManage object class, and that'll add the employee M file and H file. It'll have all the attributes of the property in here. Next step, I'm going to go to the iPhone storyboard. Click here. Drag a label here called, let's say, hello. Drag a button here. Select the button. Touch up inside. We're going to open the assistant editor. And touch up inside, in the previous tutorials that I show, and you're going to click and drag an IB action called core data click button. If I go over to the .m file, that method is there, and that's where I will write my code. Back in. Next thing, this is the default view controller, one page in there. I'm going to go in here, open up the assistant editor, shut this down, I don't need that anymore. Viewcontroller.m, close this, try it one more time, open up assistant editor. I'm going to add 3. One, NSManaged object data, NSManaged object model, persistent store coordinator, managed object context, properties. In the .m file, I'm going to synthesize those 3. Then I'm going to go into the click button, the core data click event, and write code in there. And simply what I'm going to do is insert, fetch, then delete all the objects and see how it all works. Step number 1, I'm going to init the object model that we just created a second ago. Object model, just like that. It's like a standard thing. In any project, it would be the same. Coordinator, alloc, init with object model, always the same in any project. NSArray, paths, that's not going to change from project to project. Documenter, that's not going to change. File path, this would change from one project to another. Discard me.sqlite, I'm going to use the same name as the XC data model, only drop the dot extension, keep the discard me, add .sqlite. That's how I came up with that name. Next line 41 is not going to change from project to project. NS error, standard way. Coordinator, standard way. Checking for an error. If the error is not equal to nil, display the error. And I'm going to demonstrate in 1 second what a very typical error that takes place. Now I'm going to initialize the object model. Alloc init object context, set its persistent store coordinator standard employee. Now that will change from whatever what I want to do. I want an employee. I just created the employee class a minute ago. You remember that? So employee, start employee. I'm gonna casting it here. So that would change. Maybe you are looking at employee evaluation. So you would change that. This would stay the same. This would stay the same. Employee, whatever entity you want to work on. In my XC data model, there is an entity called employee. That's where that is coming from. Once I have that on 41, employee has a first name property in XC data model. If you look at it, there's an employee, it has first name. And that's what I'm doing here. Setting his first name to Bashir. Object, this is the standard way. I'm going to call on the object context, I'm going to call save. And this I explained in the before tutorial, and pointer to an error object. If an error happens during save, it'll be in here and I can display it. That's why this is what's happening here. Now next I'm going to fetch all the objects that I have. It'll be just one there, one employee, Bashir. NS array, existing contacts, NS fetch request, just like that. It's not going to change from project to project, or if I'm doing something different. NS entity description, just like that. This is going to change right there. I want to work with the employee. Any entity, different entity you want to work on, change this name here. As the existing contacts should be existing employees. Standard way. So this would change. This would always be the same, saying fetch me the employee. Now here I'm gonna use the for each loop to iterate through these employees. For each ID object in existing contacts, casting. I'm casting this object to an employee and putting it in this variable called emp. Now I can display nslog emp not first name. It's going to spit out in the log, spit out the first name. Now I have the employee. I can do whatever I want with this employee that I have extracted from the database. Next I'm gonna do another for each loop, but this time a different technique. Instead of ID object and then casting it, I'm just going to say employee emp in existing contacts. An error object context, delete this one. Basically I'm looping through deleting everything, but this is an example how you would delete one. If you have a particular employee you want to delete it, you would just do this standard. This would change from one project to another. Object context, save, same old technique, and if there was an error display it. I'm going to set a breakpoint and run through it. Okay, I'm going to click on this core data and object model getting created, coordinator, paths, document directory, file path, database URL, error object, persistent, that the coordinator. Is there error so far? No errors. No errors. Good. Line 45 did not execute. No error so far. Object context. Set a persistent store coordinator. Fetch an employee. No, actually set an employee based on it object context. I'm saying that I'm gonna insert a new employee on line 50. I'm gonna set its property, call the save on the object context. Oh, there's an error. Null. And of course oh no, it did save it. Yeah, it should be not here. Actually, if there was a not, an exclamation point, that would mean if there's not an error. So there was no error there. If you look the error object, it was nil. So that's all good. I take that back. No errors. It's been inserted. There was only one here. I'm gonna loop through it again. This time delete it, and it's been deleted. There was only one, and it's been deleted. So I inserted one, fetched it, deleted it. Now I'm going to demonstrate another example of a very typical error. I'm going to modify the data model and add a last name. The key point is I'm modifying my data model. Now when I try to run it, I should get an error. There you go. You will see this kind of error. The model used to open the store is incompatible with the one used to create the store. What's happening here is I modified the data model, but when it's not going to update the one on the iPhone simulator. So what I gotta do is stop, switch over to my iPhone simulator and delete this project. I'm gonna hold on it until they start shivering. Click on this X, delete, run it again. Okay, do that. Try it again. Switch over the project. I deleted the wrong project. It's a discard me. This one. Delete it. Now run it again. Hopefully it won't let me down this time. There you go, no problem. So that's how you get rid of that error, very typical error. So every time you make the changes to your data model, you gotta take these steps to get over this error. I'm gonna basically delete it. No. Now I gotta do that again. So there you have it. Adding core data capabilities into a project that does not exist and how to work with it very easily. Let's talk about fetched property and how can it make it life easier for you and how to use it. Let's say you always have an employee and its age is less than 15. You want to find out. Most of the times you want to build that in. There will be a fetched property. So you click on plus sign and you can either just type it right here, change the name of it, double click, change the predicate, or open up the data inspector by going to view, utilities, show data model inspector. Either one of those two ways. You can change the name of it, whatever you like. Destination, I'm on employee table, and I can say something like age is less than 15. So now I've built a predicate, and now I can fetch data always based on this fetch property. Maybe I could just change your age less than 15. Yeah, that probably makes more sense. You can also predefine expressions in your predicate. For example, you could say add age, and now when you go into when you build your SQL in your code, this will be a replaceable parameter for this. It's a very interesting subject just to keep in mind. It's like a stored procedure. It's not as elaborate in SQL Server or Oracle, but this could help or not. You be the judge. If you plan to execute the same fetch repeatedly, only changing the value of a variable every time, you can predefine the fetch request template in the data model. You can think of a fetch request as a template, as a stored procedure, a stored query or something like that, a view maybe, if you are familiar with SQL Server and Oracle. So you don't, in your code you don't have to write it over and over again. You can predefine them, or you may want to keep them in your code. But I will just point it out that it's here. Then you can pass variable values to the template at runtime. So basically, fetch requests are listed right there. To add a fetch request, you click and hold, and then you can add fetch request. And as you now it changed it. Now if I just click tab, I actually did add one up there as well. Let me get, now I got two of them. So now I got a fetch request. Let's try this again. I'm going to delete it. I was on the employee table. I click and hold, add a fetch request, and it actually did add it up there. I didn't see that. You can just change the name right there. My fetch request, or here, or you can change the name here, which employee, fetch limit size, 10 at a time or something. If you want to limit them, let's say 100, or 0 is no limit at all. Batch size maybe in the batches of 10 or 20. Include sub-entities, include property values, return object as false. There are all these kind of options right in there. It was, I came in here, I can say either all of the following, none of the following, and then I click the plus sign. As soon as I click the plus sign, I got this. Here, this is the predicate builder. I can say age is or is not, is less than, and stuff like that. 15. The two was I could come in there, say expression age equal to age. Now the $age would be a replaceable parameter. If you plan to execute the same fetch repeatedly, only changing the value of a variable every time, you can predefine the fetch request template in the data model. You can think of a fetch request as a template, as a stored procedure, a stored query or something like that, a view maybe, if you are familiar with SQL Server and Oracle. So you don't, in your code you don't have to write it over and over again. You can predefine them, or you may want to keep them in your code. But I will just point it out that it's here. Then you can pass variable values to the template at runtime. So basically, fetch requests are listed right there. To add a fetch request, you click and hold, and then you can add fetch request. And as you now it changed it. Now if I just click tab, I actually did add one up there as well. Let me get, now I got two of them. So now I got a fetch request. Let's try this again. I'm going to delete it. I was on the employee table. I click and hold, add a fetch request, and it actually did add it up there. I didn't see that. You can just change the name right there. My fetch request, or here, or you can change the name here, which employee, fetch limit size, 10 at a time or something. If you want to limit them, let's say 100, or 0 is no limit at all. Batch size maybe in the batches of 10 or 20. Include sub-entities, include property values, return object as false. There are all these kind of options right in there. It was, I came in here, I can say either all of the following, none of the following, and then I click the plus sign. As soon as I click the plus sign, I got this. Here, this is the predicate builder. I can say age is or is not, is less than, and stuff like that. 15. The tools I could come in there, say expression age equal to age. So now the $age would be a replaceable parameter. Now in your code, you will retrieve the fetch request using the fetch request from template with name. There's an option in there, IntelliSense will show it to you. And then substitution variables method of the NS managed object model to substitute these variables with a runtime value. And that's how you can use it or not, as you wish.